Hi, my name is Rachelle McLeod. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and emotional wellness coach. And today I'm meeting with you and meeting with Jessica because she is going to tell us a little bit about, actually, she's going to tell us a lot about how she ended anxiety attacks and the racing thoughts that were keeping her up at night and all the other things that she has done with her inner world. And so I'm just getting this Zoom thing set up, and I want to make sure everything's running well. And then I'm going to introduce Jessica, and we'll take a dive in and hear from her. Getting on my phone because, that's the way to do things. There's nothing worse than starting to run your mouth and realizing that that nothing's happening, but we are live. And so I want to introduce Jessica and have her introduce herself a little bit. Jessica is a client of mine that graduated a couple months ago, and she is a mom of four. She is a stay-at-home mom. She homeschools, and she also is building a coaching practice. She is a parent coach, is very talented. It's been an honor to work with her, and so I'm going to let her introduce herself as well. So go ahead.
Hi, Rachel.
Hello.
So I'm Jessica Wilkerson. I don't know, Rachel did a really great job. Yeah, I am a mother of four of my own children, but I actually do count a fifth because I have a brother, a teenage brother that lives with me as well. So I claim five. And yes, homeschooling mom, and love the work I do as a coach with the moms that I work with. And yeah, that's me.
I didn't plan on spilling the whole beans for you, but I want to ask you the first question here, and we'll just take a dive right in. What was your life like before you found inner world transformation? What kind of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress were you experiencing?
Well, I was only really aware of the fact that I was having, depressive episodes, because my anxiety was the primary thing coming up in my life, just left and right. And so the depression came, partly as that. So those two were kind of playing into each other. And the trauma, I honestly didn't recognize how trauma was a part of it. I didn't classify it as trauma. I didn't have a lot of the classic things that we label as trauma. So I wouldn't have labeled it that. I didn't even know to call it that, or how much trauma I had to work through. To be honest, I knew I had some big hitters in my life from significant losses. But if I had to say, I would have I've had 2 traumatic events in my life. That's what I would have said. So I didn't know how much the result of the anxiety and depression that I was dealing with actually came as a result of so many traumas that I wasn't calling trauma. And so for me, it kind of looked like just overthinking throughout my day, to the point that I got very little accomplished. And I was exercising so much mental exertion. All my energy was going out just mentally and emotionally, that's when I was tired all the time. That's when I was, I would sleep a lot. I would get like the bare minimum of stuff I would need to do with my kids. They're pretty independent. They're older and pretty independent. And so I would show up for the homeschool stuff that I would do that was one-on-one with them, but I was staying in bed. I was going back to bed in the afternoons when I would put my toddler down. And then I would have so much just thoughts of beating myself up that would make it so much worse about how I wasn't showing up during the day, that then it would spiral out of control again in the evenings. And then I would numb against all the emotions of, you did this again today and you're in bed and you're letting your family down. And I would just be wreaking havoc on my mind with my thoughts, my destructive thoughts. So then I would be up until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, just, bouncing around from different videos and Facebook scrolling mostly and things like that, to then I'm beating myself up about this cycle that I'm in, but I'm staying up so late into the early morning hours that I'm already starting the ball rolling on the exact same path the next day. And so I would try to fight myself out of that on my own. I'd gone to therapy several other times. And so I would get out, notebooks, and I would get out old therapy books or books that they had recommended for me to read about handling depression and anxiety on my own. And I would return back to resources that I did have to try and kind of, help myself that way with those tools. And I think the biggest thing when I was trying to do that was that when you're trying to support yourself through something where you are and it's just you, that's really difficult to try and resource yourself when you are your only resource and you're not a healthy one. It's probably not highly recommended. And so at that point is when I was feeling frustration that way of just recognizing the loop that I was in and the cycle that I would end up, back in. At this same time is when I, am working on my coaching practice, and I'm working with coaching clients and meeting with them, but having a lot of the anxiety creep in and just block me from the next steps I wanted to be able to take to really be able to get things off the ground and provide, a more stable income for my family. So when it came to making choices and things like that is when I just felt my anxiety was really stopping me in my tracks there as well. And so the more I would try to do with my business, the worse the anxiety and the depression would hit me, in my personal life. And so I'd put the business on the side and I'd start to feel a little bit better because I got rid of a stressor. But as soon as I tried to bring it back in, so I just started blaming the business and saying, I'm just not one of those women that's cut out to do this. I just can't be a businesswoman. I just can't have both. I guess anxiety and depression will win. And then that's when I, heard you on a podcast. I was looking for inspiration, some kind of like external motivation, I think, by connecting with other, homeschooling moms who had been through depression and anxiety and were still able to rise above and build businesses. And I wanted to see where that was possible. I wanted to find those proofs and evidences for myself. And so that's when I got, on another Rachel and found your podcast with her. And when I listened to that and heard you talk about what anxiety can do to really stop you from those things, and then find out, you're also a homeschooling mom and you dealt with these things. Now I have two examples of these women who are both named Rachel. So I thought about a name change.
And that's Rachel Reinbold at Sage Family.
Okay, good. I didn't remember her last name.
Yeah. Rainbow.
So that is how I found, this other Rachel. And that's when it was like, this is possible for me. But both these women are talking about having overcome these bigger obstacles in their lives to get where they wanted to go, and that they needed other resources, to be able to do it. And so I was at that point where you're up against that wall where it was like, the resources that I'm trying to use and that I've tried to use, this had been a struggle for me for about 12 years, riding this roller coaster, just up and down, with the business vision and being a mom and homeschooling in there eventually when my kids got older. But just, this is something that was just a constant in my life. So you think of it less of it as a challenge because you're so used to it. Mm-hmm. That it's just so commonplace to you that you don't realize that you're having challenges that other people don't have. You don't realize how much you're being blocked compared to how, other people are living their lives without this stopping them left and right. And so when I saw that sense of freedom that came from what, you and the other Rachel were able to do, I thought, maybe it's not that this is just how I am. Maybe I don't have to live with the label of depression and anxiety for the rest of my life. and not get to choose to chase down my other hopes and goals and dreams in this lifetime, because I'm just sick. This is just who I am. I really did not want to give into that at all. So that's when I, made that call, booked it with you, and said, I want to learn more about this because I'm ready to do some kind of action that's different than what I've been doing to get some kind of a different result, because you guys did it, and I want a piece of that. So
right on. So good. So good. Okay. So you mentioned before you covered so many topics there, and I'm just like, I just want you to keep going. It's awesome. But you mentioned going to therapy in the past. You mentioned like looking at your books. Was there anything else that you tried to get through this stuff, to make it through? Did you ever think of that it was possible to eliminate symptoms, or were you looking for more coping? What was going on?
Yeah, I eliminate symptoms, like the idea of it's genetic and this is my brain chemistry, was really ingrained in me. Those were some really deeply held beliefs that I had coming into the program. That, shifting those alone, have done wonderful things for me, because it's, when you're in a place where you think that this is it, that it has to stop here and that you don't get to reach for anything else, you're already feeling powerless. Talking about what that place felt like, and that's what makes me emotional, is that I can talk about it now in the past tense, from a place when I didn't think that was possible. 3-4 months, what are we at now? 4 months later?
Yeah.
That overwhelms me. Like, my life is so different from a way that I didn't think was going to be possible. So when you're living in a place of impossibility, hope is the one thing that you try to cling to, and it can be fleeting. Hope can be fleeting. But seeing those who had done it, I think, it ignited that spark in me, that hope that, maybe it doesn't have to be this way. Maybe I don't have to stay with the label of anxiety and depression. Maybe there really is more for me, and I really can have more of the things. And that was it. It was like, I didn't think I was going to stop completely some of these things. I just thought maybe I can get enough relief. I can live more of my best life. That was my biggest hope, was I just want more of some of those things. I'm not asking for it all. I'm not asking for it all to go away. I just want some more. So my mind has been completely blown to the possibilities of, of what I'm capable of as a fully functioning, without depression, without anxiety, without the trauma that I did not give full attention or awareness to. How much that has impacted my life. I have no more words.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so let's take a dive in. So you enrolled in the program. What were the initial changes that you experienced?
Initially, you recognize and you realize pretty quick that this really is in your hands. This really is yours, and you really do get to claim all of it, which is scary and then immediately empowering. To say, yep, it's here and I'm addressing it full on, but now it's mine and I know what to do with it. When you can claim it in that way, that's what gives you the power to start shifting things. That's what gives you the power to start transforming these things, because you get to take ownership of it.
Right.
And choose to do something with it. So that was the first shift for me, was my recognition of, I'm not as powerless as I thought. If I'm being completely honest, it was like, Rachel's going to do some really cool, like, voodoo stuff on me, therapy stuff on me. And it's going to, like, make things all great and good. Like, if I'm being honest, I think I had part of that, like, as an expectation of, you know, this woman has got these things, and it's not untrue. It's just that you take them and say, like, no, open your hand, stop unclenching your fist, like, open it, more. Here it is. I'm going to give it to you. And now look what you can do with it. And that was terrifying and empowering. Most empowering thing to be like, I have a partnership with this woman who is here, you know, at my side to like hold me through this with so much support the whole way through, you know, hours and hours of calls every single week, email after email, message after message, you know what I mean? Like, and the group inside of this program of these women, that alone makes me emotional. I don't even know most of them super personally. Really? You know what I mean? We're all like sometimes in different parts in the program and you're going through your thing, but the support group of these women, to have a like-minded group where you can put anything out there, no matter how like crappy your day is, and you get lifted, not just by you, but by everybody in there, because you all came from the same place. You continue to feel empowered throughout this whole thing. You continue to be held and supported while you are going through your own journey of helping yourself heal yourself while being taught the tools.
Yeah.
So it's so amazing. It's the coolest, you know, program, and the way that it's set up to empower you and to heal you, and then you have those abilities forever.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That takes me back to one of our times when I remember I just got off I got off the call, and I was just like, holy cow, that was so powerful. I remember everyone was working and everyone was doing their thing. And I remember that one of the twins, I'll call them for the purposes of.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Have this huge breakthrough. And it was just like, I just felt the whole energy of the room, the Zoom room, just shift. And it was just like, I just felt like rockets take off. I just felt like everyone grabbed that power and just was like, go. And I have goosebumps. And then just like all this, I mean, just this, I remember comments you made, and just, oh my gosh, it was just, I love this. I love all of you.
Yes.
You're amazing. So
that day is one of the more profound memories that I have as well, in our Zoom room. But that's the thing, is like, we're all, waiting and respecting that time that you're supporting this, this other woman in the program, but being completely and totally impacted just by being able to observe and listen, because you relate even if it's not directly, and then being able to see how you're able to like lift and support each other right in those moments. But also that those are the conversations and those are the things that stay with you to kind of help you realize that anxiety and depression and trauma have a way of isolating you and making you feel like you're very alone.
Yeah.
And that's really dangerous. That's a really dangerous power play by those three. And as soon as you become a part of a community where you realize how not alone you are, just how much suffering that other women are also going through, and to bring the power of that womanhood together under a very talented, just pure-hearted, so supportive under Rachelle, is just, there's nothing like that. The way that you all bound together and one woman's healing becomes a community healing. And you start to lift and empower, and I feel like everybody's breakthroughs, it started, I remember one time it was like 1 week on the call, somebody talked about some breakthrough they had, and because they had this breakthrough and it's now in your awareness that it's possible, all of a sudden, all these other women started having the similar breakthroughs, because they realized, well, if one of us can, if she was able to break through and do that, I'm in the same program, I have the same tools, I must be able to too. And then you just see everybody else start to do the same things, because you're watching everybody else's progression, but not from a comparative way, but a possibility way. And that's part of what makes it so empowering.
Yeah.
So it's just, yes. I miss our Zoom room. That's all I'm thinking about right now. Like, oh, the Zoom room.
Absolutely. Okay. After these initial first results, what challenges did you face after that?
The wall. And Rachel knows exactly what I'm talking about. The wall came up. And that for me was like very much like a mental visual image. And like somatically, like it was a wall that just said, nope, you're not going past this wall. And I remember feeling really discouraged and thinking, oh man, see, I knew I would only be able to get so far, but that's okay. Like, I was like immediately like, I guess a wall's okay. It let me get a little bit farther. That's okay. Until it was, don't let that wall stay there. That wall has no place there. But it took time, and I felt the resistance. I felt my brain fighting back against what it had known to shift into something new. I felt that, protection, from that part of our brain, from that limbic system being like, nope, 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 you can't have it. You're not going there. But
Absolutely.
the coolest thing is that there are too many tools for you to be able to say that I'm done here. There's always a different tool to pick up. And so if the sledgehammer doesn't work and that issue needs some finesse, then we have some finesse tools. Like, it doesn't matter what comes up. You can pick up a different tool, like that is just another layer of empowerment of there's not just one way. There's not just one method to be able to come around when obstacles come up and you're really met with the emotions and the pain and the memories of things and addressing them head on. There are so many ways to go around and be able to meet your needs in whichever way suits. Like, I talk about these issues like they're live and real, because for me, they are. Like, they really are alive and real as a part of us. And so some of them, just like our kids, just need to be handled a little bit differently. Not every single tactic is going to work on every single issue exactly the same way. And it gets to be able to become a creative process where you are self-empowering by saying, okay, that angle isn't working. What about this angle? Okay, what about this? What about this? And you have limitless things, truly.
Yeah.
Because each tool you can go out from several different angles. So when you start to even accumulate the amount of tools you have in which to go after these things, like, don't count. Don't do that. Don't count. Just know that there's always a different way. There's always a different angle, and you never need to feel like you have stopped progressing. There is no such thing. There's always a different new way. So that was my first challenge, was the wall and the emotion and the pain, and saying, I don't like how this feels and I don't think I want to go any further into this.
That's right.
And it being like, well, let's just feel this way forever. That's why we signed up for this. And you start to throw the pity party, and
Right.
and then again, like those women in the group, they are met with the same resistances. They're met with the same things. And then you see how, like, together you push each other and you strive to just, sometimes it's 1 inch at a time. And then sometimes you're really surprised and all of a sudden it's like a mile. And then you're back to this issue that feels like it's 1 inch at a time, and you're just like crawling and to survive getting through. And then you get to that place where you just zoom forward. So those are the challenges, is that you don't know when the challenges are going to come up and what they're going to be. That alone.
Right. That's right. That's right. And I remember when the wall came up, and I was like, okay, good, the wall, let's do this, and you really handled that well. Cause I know it was frustrating, because you're like, but I want to do that work behind the wall. And it was like, and your spouse was like, see what happens, and we just worked on your survival strategy, your defense mechanism, because how important that is. And then all of a sudden, it said, okay, well, you can have this much, I remember it letting you have a couple of things.
Yeah.
And then those are the things we worked on. And then we worked on the wall. And then, and it was just really all came together so nicely.
Yeah. I wanted to go in with the sledgehammer. And it was one where everything else inside me, when you really get to be in that place where you really start to feel and you really get to start to listen, the path becomes very clear as to what your next step can be.
That's right.
If you're willing to take that step. But when this work is one of less talk, more action. It's one of being able to literally and figuratively tap into your inner guidance, and that what you need next. You know what you need. I feel like when you're in this place, you want someone to just tell you, like, just tell me what the next thing is so I can either survive, so I can just get through this day. Like, somebody tell me, what to do to get some kind of relief. And again, needing to turn to yourself for your answers is scary, but then the freedom, the liberation, and the empowerment that you get from knowing that what comes next and learning how to speak to that part of you that will tell you what comes next.
That's right.
That's one of the biggest parts of this work. That's why it's called, the inner world, because truly, like, that's a very true word, guys. Like, that's what it is. It's all inner, all inner, so that it can be, outer.
Yes,
really.
Yes. And, that's a really fun part for me to watch. It's not like I have clients regularly tell me, okay, tell me what to do, and if I do that, then you stay dependent. And I know that your brain is better at solving your problems than I am at solving your problems. I could throw you a solution. It could be terrible. Let's get the information into the right part of the brain and watch you solve your problems. And 100% of the time, all of a sudden it starts happening. And then people are like, oh, look at me. This is what I'm going to do. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do this.
Yes.
Like, look how awesome your brain is.
Yes. Seriously. Yeah. I love that. And that's, there were times, and I'm not the only one, like, when you look about the Zoom room and you see the looks on some people's faces, because Rachel is always excited for whatever the next challenge is for us. Like, this face she has right now, that is her face, like 100% of the time, where she's like, okay, that's great. Like, bring it on. Because she knows that there's not one thing that ever comes up that these tools aren't going to be able to eventually solve and be a solution for you for. And so her enthusiasm, like, for us, sometimes when you're like, you are facing it and you are terrified and you're like, these emotions and these feelings and just everything about it, and you're met with enthusiasm because she knows that you're capable and that what you're being provided with to solve them are completely, like, that. It's just so great because that, all right, it's going to be okay. Like, Rachel's still smiling. Like,
yeah, because it's like, once it's in your awareness, once you're looking right at it, it's halfway done. It's already on the conveyor out. It's like, let's give it a little push. Let it go. So yeah. And that's just fun for me. It's fun for me to watch you guys get rid of these things. And then I'm like, what's she going to be next? What's she going to do next? What's she going to say next? How's she going to feel next? Yes. And it's just like, we're just unwrapping these layers to get to this amazing inner self that is just, I love that.
Can you keep my little guy? Mommy.
We've missed each other.
We'll see if he's able to break in or not. He's not mad yet.
So, what other breakthroughs did you experience during the call, during the program?
Oh my goodness. I mean, like you mentioned in the beginning, this is gonna sound crazy to some of you guys watching this. I didn't know that I was having anxiety attacks. You remember this part of this too, right? I didn't know I was having anxiety attacks until I really started to get deeper into some of the work and the wall came up. I didn't know that I had an anxiety attack when the wall came up.
And I remember that I was like, I think that's a panic attack.
And I was like, say what?
Because tune back into it and you're like, huh.
I was like, I think you're totally right. Like, it was so ridiculous because I ran to my bookshelf and pulled down, some of my textbooks from my psychology degree and was like, panic attacks, and all the subtle ways that they can manifest and how different and unique they are to each individual.
Right.
And I went through that and I was like, crap, she's right. I didn't want you to be right. I don't know. I mean, I do now a little bit more understand what that was. Like I didn't want to be having anxiety attacks. I didn't want to admit that I was having them. I think mostly for me, it was, I didn't want to admit that I'd probably always been having them, and just the way that they presented for me was so, if I could describe this, Rachel might be able to help me out because I haven't had them in so long that you get past it and you start to not remember what they were like. So that's exciting. It, for me, was pressure in the chest. That is a pretty common characteristic of anxiety anyway, having some pressure in the chest. But for me, it gets to the point where I was like, Rachel, I'm tapping, like I'm doing these things and this pressure is so intense. And I feel like I can only breathe in so far, like, and that's when she said, I think you're having a panic attack around this. And so, but the tools were still able to facilitate me and help me to calm, my limbic system down, to get me into a place of safety. And then I was able to continue to move forward in different strategies and different tactics. And when big things like that come up, where your brain is just like, it's so unsafe that you're having panic attacks, guess what? There's still tools to like safely, put it in a box or whatever and put it where it's safe, and then continue to do your work to where it can't still get at you in such a same way. Like there are still ways when these big things come up that you're still okay. So I also found that my panic attacks were preceded by my racing thoughts, and that sometimes it wasn't such an intense pain in my chest, and the breathing wasn't as deeply as intense, but that I was having smaller panic attacks, and that those are the ones in particular I wasn't aware of because they weren't as intense as that really big one that I had when I was like, this is not normal. And I would just be laying in bed and I will try to go to sleep and I'll have thoughts, pop up that are really intrusive, just really shake your world because it has to do with your kids, or things that you're just like, where is this coming from? Like, that's terrifying, like I'm not even asleep yet and I'm having nightmares, kind of a thing. And so I would get really intrusive thoughts, or, a situation that I'd handled that day with one of my kids would pop up, and I didn't think I was feeling shame around it. And then all of a sudden I'd lay down to go to sleep, and it would be, that's probably going to turn into trauma for your kid because you weren't as patient as you could have been. And it'll take things that are so slight and make them so big in your mind and tell you that you're a failure and just drag you back down. And that's what was hitting me when I was going to bed, is just these random thoughts throughout my day that weren't even at the, front of my mind, that my subconscious would just start to throw at me. And so that's when I remember saying it in one of our Zoom rooms, and I was telling Rachel about how much I felt like mama shame was hitting me, before I went to bed. And so I started tapping for like 15 or 20 minutes before I went to bed, just on the shame piece of things, because that was mostly the stuff that was coming up for me. And I would start tapping and tapping and tapping before I went to bed. And sometimes I would journal about it if that felt right. And I would continue to tap. And I got to the place where that stopped happening. I wasn't getting the intrusive thoughts at night. But more than that, I didn't realize how many intrusive thoughts I was having during the day. And that's probably when they were coming back up at night. So when I started tapping like that right before I went to bed, I woke up better. My brain wasn't already in survival first thing in the morning. I wasn't having as many of the intrusive thoughts throughout the day. So for me, doing my last little mini session of tapping right before I went to bed set up my very next day in ways that I wasn't anticipating. So it was like a duo there of, it helped me at night and it helped set me up right for the next day too. So So that was a really big win that I experienced. Oh, there are little ones. There are ones that still show up and surprise me and catch me off guard. And I'm like, oh, that area has improved. And sometimes it's just with communication with, those tougher relationships. I
Yeah.
can't tell you what an amazing thing it is to be able to take a hard look at boundaries, what that means, and what they can look like for you, and what they look like when you have them, to start to shift things with other relationships. That wasn't an area that was, when you think about trauma and depression and anxiety, that wasn't exactly a buzzword for me. Like, oh, let's focus on boundaries. You know what I mean? And it's been one of the most profound areas of work in there to help me, because without boundaries, you have more anxiety, you have more depression, you allow more of the trauma in without those boundaries to be able to say no and stand in your own power and be okay. I didn't realize how many issues I had with boundaries. But most likely, if you're struggling with any one of those three things, you're struggling with boundaries. Like, they come together, they go hand in hand.
Yes,
so I experience frequently, like, oh, that's shifted over there, and this is shifted over here. This person is responding differently because I've held, I'm holding a boundary there. And you start to see ways where it's like there's a snowball effect where it's one big snowball. This is radically different because you are starting so many little snowballs that then later you start to recognize just how much they have, taken on and created so much impact and power on their own. This isn't a work of like, let's tackle one big snowball. No, you're constantly starting little ones rolling all the time.
Right.
All the time.
It's true.
And as they roll down the hill, they're like taking out other stuff with them. So it's
that's right. That's right. That's so true.
So yeah, there are too many things to be able to say all these things have shifted, because I see little tweaks and things of like, oh, I see that all the time, But Rachel trained you to look for them too. You start to become trained to find all of the wins, to find all of the successes, and to retrain your brain for what you're looking for. And that's really empowering as well, because there's so much. There's so much.
So good, so good. So since you've graduated, where are you at now? You just graduated 2 months ago.
Yeah, December.
Yeah.
So for me, it's I don't go to bed with racing thoughts hardly at all. If I do, I know exactly what to do with them, and I continue that practice of just tapping before I go to bed. As well, like I try to remember to do that. And my days go a lot more smooth. I am not, it happens every once in a while where I will numb at night, but now I know I have awareness around that there's something I'm numbing from. Now I know what I can call numbing and what isn't numbing. And I can see when I'm doing it, and then I know what I can do to go into my inner world and find out, what am I running from? What are the emotions I'm not wanting to face? Why am I turning to this screen aimlessly when I go to bed? To be able to lay in bed and pick up your phone, and sometimes half hour, 45 minutes, and go, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, what is happening? And be able to reach over, put the phone down, sit up in bed, pick up a journal, and start tapping. Even if you do that for another half an hour or 45 minutes, by the end of that half hour or 45 minutes, even if it takes me that long, I know why I was numbing. I know what those emotions were and where they were coming from. And I think I could give a more direct example in this if you want.
Yeah, tell us.
Pull
back.
I know. So just the other day, I got a phone call from my sister that said, my gallbladder is going crazy. I need to go in for surgery. And can you and the kids come out, help me with my kids when I go in for this surgery? And it was like, yeah, of course, we'll come up, we'll do it. Like, we have the flexibility in our lives, we can do that. And then I started to look at her dates and my dates and how they were conflicting, and my inner world just started to go off. My first clue that I'm really aware of now, even more so, because I do somewhat of a similar work with moms. So I already knew when I'm going off on my kids, that's not my kids. It's not my kids. So as soon as I felt my impatience level rise, I already knew something inside of me was going on. So I took that time to tell my kids, I need to go into my room and, I need to do some tapping. And I did. And so I was kind of managing, throughout the day, knowing these things were coming up. But still, at the end of the day, I went down to go to sleep, and I had my phone, and I had it in front of me, and I put it aside after about a half an hour or so, and I sat up and I started tapping, and I got my journal out, and it was coming back to a lot of like the pain and trauma from my past with my mom. Because one of my big anxiety inducers is worrying about other people and what can I do to help fix this problem? How can I help make this better? Is there a way I can get these people to come back together and solve their solutions, kind of a thing? So the fact that my sister is in a place where she needs to pick up the phone and call me to be the one to rearrange my life with my 4 little kids and come help her, I was pissed off at my mom because she should have been the one that she was able to call. I was sad for my sister because she's not in a place for my mom where they're even talking and she could call her. I was so mad and I was so hurt, and these feelings were coming up that's what I was numbing from, is these feelings surrounding a simple call of like, of course I'm going to drop everything and help my sister. And I didn't think I had these emotions coming up. And when I felt them coming up as I got impatient with my kids, I did do some work around that and got myself back to a better place to be able to parent the way I want to parent throughout the day. And it was right there waiting for me when I went to bed. Yeah. It gave me what I needed to get through the day, and it was right there waiting. And so I was able to tap through it and work through it and find out where in there is the, again, boundaries. If I need to be able to say no to my sister because I have these things on my schedule and I can't, a part of me was not okay with that. You've been the mother figure for each other. You can't tell her no, that you're not going to come help her. That's what's expected of you. You have to do this. I was able to do that work and work through that. And the next day, pick up the phone and call my sister and say, I don't know if this is going to work, out for me with these things I have going on in March, depending on which week it lands. We're going to figure it out and it's going to be okay. And then I was able to call my stepmom, who lives in Tennessee. My sister's in Utah. So, big gap. And say, this is what's going on with her. I might not be able to do it. Is this a possibility for you? My anxiety was telling me, your stepmom already takes care of her ailing mother. Your stepmom already is taking care of somebody else. She doesn't have time to let go and take care of somebody else. And my thoughts started to go, she's not an option. She's not. And you're problem solving for other people's problems. And your anxiety mind will just go and go and go. And instead, I tapped through that. I found where the boundary was of, this really is my sister's to deal with on what she's choosing to do with my mom, not mine. This is my sister's, this is my stepmom's choice in if she's going to go out and help my sister, not my choice to make for her and say, you have too much on your plate, you don't get to go. And then I take it all upon myself. That's what I would have done. This has to be on me. So I was able to work through all of that, call my sister, call my stepmom and say to my stepmom, this is what's going on, but you get to choose whether or not this is something that's going to work for you, not mine. And instead of staying in the anxious place and trying to figure it all out, I let it go. I let it go and gave it back to the people who it belonged to. Told my sister, I'll be there if it's on this week's. If it's not on those weeks, I can't. And I'm letting our stepmom decide if she's going to be able to come out and figure that out. And it was all fine. The fears of what's your sister going to do, what's she going to say, what's your stepmom going to do, they're going to be so annoyed at you that you're just not taking it all upon yourself to take care of everybody, because that's what you usually do.
Yes.
I never would have been able to do that without this work 5 months ago. There's no way if my sister had called me with this same information 5 months ago, I would have been able to do that. Right. No way.
And how does that make you feel about yourself?
That word that just keeps coming up is just so empowered, because it doesn't matter what comes up, you know what to do with it.
And that you didn't have guidance during that time. I mean, that was you.
No, this was guys, this was last week. This was just last week. This was not during the program. This is not while I was in the program. That's why Rachel's not like, I remember when you worked through this, because
I know. Yeah.
This was last week and I graduated in December. But you know what to do with these things. You see the warning signs, you see the red flags that something is going on, you know, underneath the surface. Like, one of the best analogies, I don't even know if I've shared this with Rachel, but it's, you know, scientists can predict stuff going on with where there's volcanic activity before it even comes to the surface. There are warning signs that it is going on. We're no different. We are no different. This inner work helps you see what's coming, how it's coming, how strong it's coming. Like, you can get to the point where you're like, oh, this is kind of a big one, versus like, this is a simpler one. Like, you start to be able to really gauge what's going on, and you have the tools to be able to handle it, but it's predicted. You can feel when it's coming and how it shows up for you. So it's rather than just eruption.
That's right.
Volcano. I had no idea that was coming.
So much work reconnecting to your body, your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, your subconscious programming. I mean,
yes.
You know, and so you hear the messages they're sending you, and you know what to do with them. Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. So, what advice would you give to somebody who is struggling with these same challenges that you had?
I would say that making a decision to do something that's really good for you can still be really scary when you're in the midst of anxiety and depression and trauma. And that you may not realize yet that you're actually being affected by all three. You might think it's just one, but that it's so worth it. It's so worth it. It's one of those things. Don't overthink it. Don't let this one run away with you. All the reasons you have why not to do this work, or, you know, and resources that you might think I can turn to, and this and this and this will help me. If that was true, then A, you wouldn't be watching this because they would have worked. And B, a key piece that's missing is, you know, the support, the accountability, that impactful group. Jump in. And if it's a part, if you are so impacted by depression, anxiety, or trauma that you cannot function the way you want to, even if all you have right now is maybe a hope that things could even just get slightly better, that alone will be worth it. And you'll be blown away, and you'll get way more than you can dream of asking for right now.
That's right.
That's what I would say. Because you just don't know until you're on the other side of it. And each person's journey is going to be different. There's no way to know just how impacted you're going to be until you've done the work. But that's why I feel like, from where I was and going through this and being on the other side, I have no problem saying that you'll just be blown away by everything that you start to see taking shape every single day, every single week after graduation, as you continue this work and have all of the tools. I said this at the end when I graduated. I said the end is really just the beginning, because you just now have everything it takes to keep going. And that's so exciting. That's right. It's so exciting because you get to continue to grow and progress and move, you know, through these things with confidence, and still with that support that doesn't go away. You know, it might change, you know, how the support is maybe, but it doesn't, you still have support. You still have this group. And the recordings, like, there's times I've gone back and listened to a recording, and then you get to have those messages with you always. Like, the coaching doesn't end, you know, like a comment one of the other women makes, or something that you and Rachel have talked about when you come up with an issue against an issue that's the same in your work. You already know what she's going to say. You know, you already have it with you. Like, it doesn't just end. It's there. Just like those guiding voices that you already have from a loved one, a grandparent or a father or a mother figure. You have many now, not just Rachel's, but many empowering, supportive voices. You know, they're supporting you and with you, and it's just just beyond worth it. Beyond worth it.
Wonderful.
That's what I would say. Jump in. Don't let the fear get you on this one.
And what's the first step you would recommend people to take?
You got to talk to Rachel. That's what I would say.
Yes. So having said that, you know, if you want the same kind of empowerment that Jessica has achieved, and you want to talk with me to see if I can help you accomplish that, go ahead and book a call with me. You can go to rachelmcleod.com/call, and I have time to speak with you. Grab a spot and we'll talk, and we'll see where we go from here. So thank you for joining us, Jessica. Thank you everyone for watching. This was really wonderful. I have the goosebumps, and just going back to some of those wonderful times. That was phenomenal. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
All right. Bye, everyone.